Caleb swore he locked the window before bed, but this morning it stood half open, the curtain dancing in the cold October wind. He stared at it from the kitchen, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. Hazel sat at the table, pushing cereal around her bowl, her eyes fixed on something outside. When he asked what she was looking at, she didn't answer, just kept staring. The weather alert on his phone buzzed again. Hurricane Katrina, Category 4, making landfall in 18 hours. Evacuation recommended. But Caleb had lived through storms before. 2 years ago. One had taken everything that mattered. He wasn't running this time. He was staying in the house where Rachel had last smiled, last breathed, last whispered that someone was coming for her. The wind had already begun its low howl by the time Caleb finished boarding up the downstairs windows. Hazel watched from the couch, her small hands clutching the stuffed rabbit Rachel had sewn for her 3rd birthday. The rabbit's left ear was nearly threadbare now, loved into tatters. Caleb hammered the last nail into the plywood sheet covering the living room window, each strike echoing through the house like a countdown. The meteorologist on the television spoke in that calm, measured tone they all used before hell arrived. Sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, storm surge of 15 to 20 feet, catastrophic damage expected. Caleb had heard it all before. 2 years ago, Hurricane David had brought rain that turned their street into a river. Rachel had gone out to move the car to higher ground. She never came back. They found her 3 days later, washed up near the marina, her hands still gripping the car keys. Accidental drowning, the report said. Tragedy. Bad luck. Nothing suspicious. But Caleb had never believed it. Rachel was a strong swimmer. She grew up on these waters. And the night she died, she'd been scared. He remembered her pacing the kitchen, checking her phone every few minutes, jumping at shadows. When he asked what was wrong, she'd kissed him and said, "Nothing, just the storm." Her smile hadn't reached her eyes. Now, watching Hazel stare at that same window where Rachel had stood 2 years ago, Caleb felt the old paranoia creeping back, the sensation of being watched, of something circling, waiting. He'd felt it for weeks now, small things out of place. His keys moved from the hook to the counter, the back door unlocked when he was certain he'd secured it. Footprints in the garden that weren't his or Hazel's. "Daddy?" Hazel's voice was small. "Is someone coming?" Caleb turned from the window. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Mummy used to say that. Before the storm. She said someone was coming." Hazel's fingers tightened around the rabbit's neck. "Are they coming now?" The hammer slipped from Caleb's hand and clattered to the floor. He'd never told Hazel about Rachel's behavior that night. She'd been too young to remember, or so he thought. By 6 in the evening, the hurricane had arrived in earnest. The wind didn't just blow, it screamed. It found every gap in the house's armor and exploited it, whistling through cracks, rattling doors, making the entire structure groan like a ship at sea. Caleb and Hazel huddled in the basement, the weather radio crackling with updates that grew increasingly dire. The power had failed an hour ago, plunging them into a darkness broken only by the beam of Caleb's flashlight. Hazel had finally fallen asleep, curled against his side with the rabbit tucked under her chin. Caleb stroked her hair and listened to the storm rage overhead. Then, through the chaos, he heard something else. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. A metallic crash, followed by a scream that cut through the wind like a knife. Caleb's body went rigid. He told himself he'd imagined it. No one would be outside in this. The scream came again, weaker this time, barely audible over the roar of the hurricane. "Help! Please! Someone!" Caleb looked down at Hazel, still sleeping despite the noise. He could stay here, stay safe. But the scream was real, human, desperate. He eased Hazel onto the cot and covered her with a blanket. She stirred, but didn't wake. He grabbed his waterproof jacket and the flashlight, his hands shaking as he pulled on his boots. This was insane. The wind was strong enough to pick up a grown man and throw him like a rag doll. One piece of flying debris could kill him instantly. But someone was out there. Someone needed help. When he finally wrenched open the basement door, the storm hit him like a physical assault. Rain so thick it was like being underwater. Wind that stole his breath and nearly knocked him off his feet. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him. "Where are you?" he shouted, but the wind ripped the words away. Then he saw it. Tail lights, dim and red, about 50 yards from his house. Lightning flashed, and in that brief moment of illumination, Caleb saw the SUV wrapped around the massive oak tree at the edge of his property. The driver's side was completely crushed. He ran, or tried to. The wind kept pushing him sideways, and twice he fell, tearing his hands on gravel and broken glass. When he reached the SUV, he had to grab the open door to keep from being blown away. The scene inside stopped his heart. A woman slumped over the steering wheel, her neck bent at an angle that told Caleb everything he needed to know. In the passenger seat, a man was pinned by the dashboard, blood streaming down his face, his eyes glazed but conscious. And in the back, strapped into a booster seat, a little girl was screaming. "Help her!" the man gasped. Blood bubbled at his lips. "Please, my daughter. Get my daughter." Caleb climbed into the destroyed vehicle, glass crunching under his boots. The girl was maybe 9 or 10, dark hair plastered to her face, eyes wide with shock. He worked the seatbelt buckle with fingers that had gone numb from cold and adrenaline. Behind him, the man coughed, and Caleb heard the wet rattle that meant lungs filling with blood. "Take care of her," the man wheezed. He reached out with one hand, grabbing Caleb's jacket with surprising strength. His eyes were desperate, pleading. "Protect her. Don't trust anyone. Not even—" His voice cut off. His hand fell. The light left his eyes. Caleb finally got the seatbelt undone and lifted the girl out of the seat. She was small for her age, light as a bird. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. "Close your eyes," he told her. "Don't look." The journey back to the house felt like miles instead of yards. The wind had gotten worse. If that was possible, something large and metal flew past them so close Caleb felt the displacement of air. A tree branch struck his shoulder and he nearly dropped the girl. But he kept moving, kept his body between her and the worst of the debris, kept telling her she was safe, even though nothing about this was safe. When they finally tumbled through his front door, both of them were bleeding from a dozen small cuts. "Hazel!" Caleb called toward the basement. "Hazel, wake up! I need you!" He heard movement below, and then Hazel appeared at the basement door, rubbing her eyes. When she saw the strange girl, she froze. "Who's that?" "This is—" Caleb realized he didn't know the girl's name. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" The girl looked at him with eyes that seemed too old for her face. "Mia," she whispered. "Mia Wright." The basement smelled like damp concrete and the metallic tang of fear. Caleb had wrapped Mia in every dry blanket he could find, but she still shivered, her teeth chattering. Hazel sat on the opposite cot, her rabbit clutched tight, staring at Mia with an intensity that made Caleb uncomfortable. His phone had no signal. The landline was dead. The storm had taken out everything. They were completely cut off until the storm passed, which could be anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. "Mia, honey, are you hurt?" Caleb asked gently. "Can you tell me where it hurts?" Mia's eyes tracked to him slowly. "My parents," she whispered. "Are they—" Caleb felt his chest tighten. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I tried, but the crash was very bad." Mia didn't cry, didn't scream. She just nodded, as if she'd already known. Then she looked past Caleb to where Hazel sat watching them. "I know you," Mia said. Hazel blinked. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do. You're Hazel Ward. Your mother was Rachel Ward. She died 2 years ago in Hurricane David." Mia's voice was flat, factual, like she was reciting information from a report. "Your father is Caleb Ward, age 36, works as a marine biologist at the Coastal Research Center. You live at 42 Seahawk Drive." The basement went silent except for the storm. Caleb felt ice spread through his veins. "How do you know that?" Mia's eyes slid back to him. "My father told me. He knew everything about you." "Your father? What did your father do, Mia?" "He found people." Mia pulled the blanket tighter. "People who didn't want to be found. People who were hiding. He was a private investigator. He was investigating someone close to you. Someone who killed your wife and made it look like an accident. We were coming to tell you. To warn you." The words hit Caleb like a physical blow. Hazel made a small sound, almost a whimper. "Who?" Caleb managed. "Who killed Rachel?" Mia opened her mouth to answer, but Hazel cut her off. "She's lying. Mommy drowned. It was an accident. Everyone said so." "I'm not lying," Mia said, her voice eerily calm. "My father never lies. He finds the truth. That's what he does. That's what got him killed. Right before the crash, he saw something in the road. He swerved. The tree. It wasn't an accident." Caleb felt the room spinning. 2 years. He'd spent 2 years being told he was paranoid, that his suspicions were just grief. But he'd always known something was wrong. Rachel's behavior in the days before the storm. Her fear. The way she'd looked at him that last night, like she wanted to tell him something but couldn't. "Where's the proof?" Caleb asked. "Your father's evidence. Where is it?" Mia pulled something from her pocket. A small flash drive, waterproof case still sealed. She held it up. "My father made backups of everything. He gave this to me before we left. Told me to keep it safe. Told me that if anything happened to him, I should give it to you." She held the drive out to Caleb. "He said you deserved to know the truth." Caleb took the drive with hands that shook. It was so small, so ordinary, but it contained the answer to 2 years of questions. "Who is it?" His voice cracked. "Who killed her?" Mia's face went pale. She looked at the basement door at the top of the stairs. "Someone who's been watching this house. Someone who knows we're here. Someone who—" A sound from upstairs cut her off. Not the storm. Something else. Something inside the house. The unmistakable creak of footsteps on the old floorboards. Caleb's blood turned to ice. He'd locked the door. He knew he'd locked it. "Get behind me," he whispered to the girls. "Both of you. Now." Hazel and Mia scrambled behind him as another footstep sounded, then another. Someone was in the house. Someone had come in during the storm. The basement door at the top of the stairs stood closed. Caleb stared at it, watching for the knob to turn. The footsteps stopped right outside the basement door. Caleb could hear breathing on the other side, heavy and deliberate. Then a voice, muffled by the door but still recognizable, said, "Caleb, I know you're down there. And I know you have the girl. We need to talk." Caleb's entire world tilted sideways. He knew that voice. Knew it as well as he knew his own. And in that moment, everything David Wright had discovered crashed down on him with a weight that made the hurricane outside seem gentle. Because the person who'd killed Rachel, the person who'd caused the Wright family's crash, the person who'd been watching them, was his brother, Marcus. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Caleb's mind raced through every conversation, every moment from the past 2 years. Marcus. His younger brother, who'd moved to the coast 5 years ago, who lived just 10 minutes away, who came over every Sunday for dinner. Marcus, who'd been devastated by Rachel's death. Marcus, who'd helped Caleb through the darkest days. Marcus, who'd been at the house the night of Hurricane David. Who'd been there when Rachel went out to move the car. Who'd been there when she never came back. "No," Caleb breathed. "You wouldn't. You couldn't." "I had no choice." Marcus's voice was thick, clogged with emotion. "The debt was $300,000, Caleb. They were going to kill me, unless I could give them something valuable. And what's more valuable than a marine research facility's data on coastal development locations? Information about environmental reports that haven't been filed yet." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Caleb's work dealt with environmental impact assessments, marine habitat evaluations, all information that would be invaluable to developers. Information that was supposed to be confidential. "Rachel found the files," Caleb said. "The ones you'd stolen from my office. She wasn't supposed to. She found the USB drive in my car. She knew what it meant. Knew I'd been selling information for months. She said she was going to turn me in. That some things were more important than family. I followed her out when she went to move the car. The water was so high. The current so strong." His voice broke. "I held her under until she stopped fighting." Hazel made a sound like a wounded animal. Caleb felt her legs give out, and he had to hold her up while his own mind screamed with horror. His brother, his own brother, had murdered Rachel, had held Caleb while he cried, all the while knowing he was the one who'd made Caleb a widower. "The Wrights," Mia said, cutting through the spiral. "What about my parents?" "I didn't know David Wright was investigating me until last week. He was good, but I found out just in time, a branch across the road right before that curve. They swerved. I didn't have a choice. Once one person knows, it spreads. I'd have lost everything." "So you're going to kill us too," Caleb said, positioning himself between the door and the girls. "I don't want to. God, Caleb, you're my brother, but you have the flash drive. You know the truth. I can't let you leave this basement." Caleb looked around desperately. The basement had one exit. No windows big enough to crawl through. They were trapped, but they weren't unarmed. The toolbox in the corner, the old baseball bat, the heavy flashlight in his hand. "I'm going to open this door," Marcus called. "We can talk about this. You murdered my wife. There's no talking through that." The doorknob began to turn. The door opened a crack, and Caleb could see Marcus's shadow. His brother. His betrayer. "Stay back!" Caleb raised the flashlight. "I'm warning you!" Marcus pushed the door open fully and started down the stairs. He had a crowbar in his hand. A weapon. This wasn't going to be a conversation. This was going to be an execution. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and he actually looked sorry. "I'm so sorry it has to be this way." Then Mia did something unexpected. She darted out from behind Caleb, fast as a rabbit, and sprinted toward the stairs. Not away from Marcus. Toward him. "Mia, no!" Caleb lunged for her, but she was too quick. She flew up the stairs, small and nimble, ducking under Marcus's reaching arm. He tried to grab her, but she twisted away and was past him, through the door, into the main house. Marcus turned to chase her, taking his eyes off Caleb. That was all the opening Caleb needed. He launched himself up the stairs and swung the flashlight with everything he had. The metal barrel caught Marcus on the side of the head with a sickening crack. Marcus stumbled, dropped the crowbar, grabbed for the railing. Blood ran down his temple. But he didn't go down. "You shouldn't have done that," Marcus said, and lunged. They crashed together on the stairs, a tangle of fists and desperation. Caleb felt Marcus's hands close around his throat, squeezing, cutting off air. He clawed at his brother's face. They rolled, tumbled down 3 stairs, hit the concrete floor hard. "Daddy!" Hazel was screaming, but Caleb couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in his vision. Then suddenly the pressure was gone. Marcus jerked backward, howling. Hazel stood behind him with a screwdriver from the toolbox. She'd stabbed him in the shoulder. Marcus whirled on her, murder in his eyes. Caleb grabbed the fallen crowbar and swung. This time he didn't hold back. The crowbar caught Marcus across the back. Marcus went to his knees, gasping. "Hazel, get upstairs! Find Mia! Go!" Hazel ran. Caleb kept the crowbar raised, standing over his brother. Marcus looked up at him, blood running from his mouth. "Please!" Marcus wheezed. "I'm your brother!" "You stopped being my brother when you killed Rachel." A sound from upstairs. A crash. Then Hazel screaming. Caleb ran, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The main level was in chaos. The storm had broken through one of the windows, and rain was pouring in. Wind whipped through the house. And in the kitchen, a man had Mia pinned against the counter, a knife at her throat. One of the men Marcus owed money to, Caleb guessed. Come to make sure the job was done. "Drop the crowbar," the man said. "Drop it or the kid dies." Caleb's mind raced. If he dropped the crowbar, they'd all die. Then Mia looked at him, and he saw something in her eyes. A plan. She went suddenly limp in the man's arms, dead weight. Surprised, he loosened his grip. Mia twisted, sank her teeth into his wrist, and when he yelped and dropped the knife, she dove away. Caleb threw the crowbar. It spun end over end and caught the man in the face. He went down hard. Caleb grabbed both girls and ran for the front door. The storm hit them like a wall. Wind and rain so intense it was like being underwater. But Caleb didn't stop. He ran through the darkness, away from the house. They collapsed together in the shelter of an overturned car 3 streets away, huddling beneath it as the storm raged on. Hours passed. The storm began to weaken. Dawn came slowly, grey and reluctant. Caleb heard sirens in the distance. He carried Hazel, and Mia walked beside him, as they made their way toward the sound of help. They found a rescue team working 2 blocks over. Caleb tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. "He was in shock," the paramedic said. She wrapped blankets around them and loaded them into an ambulance. At the emergency shelter, Caleb finally got through to the police. Officers were dispatched to his house. They found Marcus in the basement, barely alive, the hired killer unconscious in the kitchen. Both were taken into custody. The evidence on the flash drive was damning. Proof of Marcus's theft and data selling. Communications that showed premeditation in Rachel's murder. David Wright had been thorough. He'd built a case that couldn't be denied. Marcus was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, theft, fraud. He'd spend the rest of his life in prison. But knowing the truth didn't make it easier, didn't bring Rachel back, didn't undo the 2 years Caleb had spent doubting himself. He'd been right all along. Rachel had been murdered, and the killer had been living 10 minutes away, coming over for Sunday dinners, all while wearing the mask of a grieving brother. 3 weeks after the storm, Caleb attended David and Hannah Wright's funeral. It rained. A soft, gentle rain. Mia stood beside him in a black dress, borrowed from a cousin. She didn't cry. Hadn't cried since that night. After the service, Caleb knelt beside her. "You have family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They want to take care of you." Mia looked at him. "I know. But if you wanted—" He struggled to find the words. "Hazel and I have a lot of room. We're going to move, start over somewhere new. You could come with us, if you wanted." "Why?" Mia asked. Not hostile, just curious. "Because your father saved my life by finding the truth. Because you saved Hazel's life that night. because I think Rachel would have wanted me to help you." Mia considered this. "Would I have my own room?" "Yes." "Okay, I'll come with you." It took 4 months to sort out the legalities. Eventually, Caleb Ward became the legal guardian of Mia Wright. They moved to a house inland, away from the coast, away from the memories, somewhere the storms couldn't reach them. Hazel struggled at first. Nightmares every night. Fear of storms, of darkness. A therapist helped. Medication helped. Time helped. She and Mia formed an odd bond, 2 girls understanding each other in ways no one else could. 6 months after the hurricane, their new life had found a rhythm. Not normal. Nothing would ever be normal again. But functional. Survivable. Then one November evening, Caleb came home from work to find Mia standing at the living room window, staring out at the street. The same way Hazel used to stand at the window in the old house. "What are you looking at?" Caleb asked, trying to keep his voice light. "Someone's been watching the house," Mia said calmly. "Silver sedan. Different person each time, but same car. They sit across the street for about 20 minutes, then leave. It's been happening for 2 weeks. Caleb's blood ran cold. "Could be a reporter. Or just someone curious." "Maybe." Mia didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe Marcus had other partners. People who want to make sure we don't know anything else." Caleb called Detective Morrison, the lead investigator on Marcus's case, told her about the silver sedan. Morrison promised to look into it, to send patrol cars by more frequently. But she also said something that stuck with Caleb. The Wright investigation opened a lot of doors. A lot of powerful people are very unhappy about what's coming to light. David Wright was digging into some serious corruption. Real estate fraud, environmental violations, bribery. If I were you, I'd be careful. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning, he heard something downstairs. He checked on Hazel first. She was asleep. Then Mia's room. Her bed was empty. He found her in his office, at his computer. "Found something," Mia said. "In my dad's backup files. The ones he kept in the cloud." She turned the monitor so he could see. A document listing names, dates, transactions. Names of local politicians, business owners, even a judge. All connected through illegal deals. "This is bigger than we thought," Mia said. "My dad wasn't just investigating your brother. He was investigating an entire network, and they killed him for it." The next morning, Caleb showed Detective Morrison what Mia had found. Morrison's face went pale. "This is huge. Federal corruption charges. We need to get you into protective custody, all 3 of you, until the trials are over. Could be months." So protective custody it was. A safe house, new identities, 24-hour security. Their lives put on hold while the legal system ground forward. The night before they left, Hazel asked, "Are we ever going to be safe? Really safe?" Caleb wanted to lie, but she deserved the truth. "I don't know. I think maybe after what we've been through, you never feel completely safe again. Part of you is always watching, always ready. Is that a bad thing? It's a survival thing. It keeps you alert. It's kept us alive." Mia appeared in the doorway. "My dad used to say that the price of truth is never being able to look away again. Once you've seen how the world really works, you can never unsee it." The 3 of them sat in silence, bound by trauma and survival. Tomorrow they'd go into hiding. Eventually they'd testify. Hopefully they'd help put away the people who'd destroyed their families. And maybe, someday, they'd be able to stop looking over their shoulders. But Caleb doubted it. Still, they'd survived. Against odds that should have killed them, they'd survived. That had to count for something. The trials took 18 months. Caleb testified first, then Mia. her testimony so composed it made prosecutors weep. Marcus got life without parole. 3 city council members, 2 developers, and a district judge all went to prison. The network David Wright had been investigating was dismantled piece by piece. After the last trial ended, they were released from protective custody, given new identities and money to restart anywhere they wanted. Caleb chose a small town in Montana, as far from the ocean as he could get. Somewhere storms meant snow, not hurricanes. They bought a house on 5 acres, with clear sight lines in every direction, motion sensor lights, a security system. Every window had an escape route, mapped and rehearsed. It took 2 years for Hazel to stop sleeping with the rabbit, 3 years for Mia to go a full day without checking over her shoulder, 4 years for Caleb to make it through a thunderstorm without panicking. But slowly, cautiously, they healed. They learned to live with what they'd been through instead of being destroyed by it. Hazel made friends at school. She wanted to be a lawyer when she grew up, she said, to help people who couldn't protect themselves. Mia excelled at everything. Straight A's, student council. She kept her father's files in a locked cabinet, looking through them sometimes. She wanted to be an investigator like he'd been. Find truth, expose lies. And Caleb learned to forgive himself for not seeing what Marcus really was, for not protecting Rachel. He learned that some guilt you carry forever, but that didn't mean it had to crush you. You could carry it and still move forward. On the 5-year anniversary of the hurricane, the 3 of them drove to the coast, to the cemetery where Rachel, David, and Hannah were buried. They brought white roses and stood in the salt-tinged wind, remembering. "Do you think they're proud of us?" Hazel asked. She was 13 now, tall and serious, with Rachel's eyes. "Yes," Caleb said. "I think they're very proud." "I think they're relieved," Mia said. She was 14, sharp and observant. "That we survived, that we testified, that we made sure their deaths meant something." They stood in silence, 3 people bound by tragedy and faith and love. A family forged not by blood, but by choice, by shared trauma transformed into shared strength. As they walked back to the car, Caleb looked back one more time at the gravestones. The ocean wind carried the salt smell he'd once loved, back when this place felt like home. Back before he learned that home wasn't a place. It was the people willing to run into hurricanes for you. That night, back in Montana, after both girls had gone to bed, Caleb sat on the back porch watching the stars. Mia appeared beside him, quiet as always. "Are we safe now?" she asked, the question that had haunted them for 5 years. Really safe? Caleb thought about it. About Marcus in prison and the corrupt officials locked away. About the security system and all the precautions they'd taken. "No," he said honestly. "We're never going to be completely safe. Bad things happen. Storms come. People betray you. Then what's the point? Because safety isn't the absence of danger. It's knowing you can handle the danger when it comes. It's having people who'll run into hurricanes for you, who'll stand between you and the people trying to hurt you." He pulled her closer. "You're not safe because nothing bad can happen. You're safe because when bad things do happen, you're not alone. You have me, you have Hazel. You have a whole network of people who care whether you live or die." Mia was quiet for a moment. "That's what my dad used to say, that safety isn't a place, it's people." "Smart man." "Yeah, he was." Inside, Hazel called out in her sleep, and Caleb went to check on her. Found her tangled in blankets, the old rabbit somehow clutched in her hand again. He straightened her covers, smoothed her hair, whispered that she was safe. And for tonight, in this house they'd built together, Far from hurricanes and conspiracies and all the people who'd tried to destroy them, it was true. They were safe. For now. And for now was enough.